That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I get it. I know what everybody in the Premier is saying right now. Everybody in the Premier going, James Conner, James Conner, James Conner, probably spamming it, telling me, Mason, you suck. And I understand. Yes, I do. And we're going to dive into everything that happened this week. You know it. But before we get into James Conner, I'm going to talk about everything else because I want to dive in depth. I want to talk about him for a very long time at the end, but I would rather just spend a lot of time rattling off players beforehand. Real quick, let me pull up our last video so I can give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats. I don't have one on me. I'll throw one up on the screen so y'all can see what it looks like. Nonetheless, we're just going to be picking out some random comments, and let's grab this first one from Richard. Don't know exactly what that says, but you'll see it on the screen. And then our next one going to come out from Don Thomas. This one about the fantasy football gods. So yeah, of course, every time you go down there, drop a like on the video and leave a comment, you actually get entered in to win a free Fantasy Flock Network hat. And you can always just go to Patreon, claim your Fantasy Flock Network hat that way if you don't want to wait around for a free one. And also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We just passed 60,000 subscribers on the live stream this morning. So, of course, thank you so much for everybody who's been supporting the channel along the way. But yeah, I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into it. And we'll recap everything with James Conner at the end. But before we do that, we have to actually go through and we have to talk about something else that I got wrong this week. And that is Brandon Aiyuk. Now, y'all know we had so many people coming out in the live stream this week. And I kind of thought it was crazy asking us, Mason, is this the week that we go through? Is this the week that we play Brandon Aiyuk? And I was not only saying no, but I was being arrogant. I was being just a complete ass about the situation, almost laughing at the people that were saying, Mason, should we be starting Brandon Aiyuk? I mean, look at what's going on with Deebo Samuel. I mean, look at the amount of snaps that he played a week ago. Look at the amount of routes run he had. He got the 2-point conversion. He looked good back in week 8. And I was going, no. We don't want to be playing Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, going into the week here with Brandon Aiyuk, this is what we are going to every single time we got asked a question. He was the wide receiver 105. Yes, he was the wide receiver 105 in points per game, behind Gabriel Davis, Deshaun Jackson, Adam Humphries, Chester Rogers, Nico Collins, Nick Westbrook, Danny Mendola, Freddie Swain, Braxton Berrios, Russell Gage, Chris Moore, Jamal Agnew, Paris Campbell. We wanted nothing to do with Brandon Aiyuk, even though, of course, you wanted to have him on your roster based on the upside that he had, but to put him in your starting lineup, I thought was crazy. Now, Brandon Aiyuk has his best week of the season. He comes out and he has 8 targets this week, 6 receptions, 89 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown at the same time. Now, what's really impressive about this performance is it's done with George Kittle as well in this offense. Kittle getting his own decent amount of targets. Kittle getting his own role in this team, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But nonetheless, Brandon Aiyuk, I think we are a little too quick to say that this is someone you can't consider putting in your starting lineup. Now he's had 15 targets over the past 2 weeks. I mean, back in week 8, he had 7 targets, which was the most he had throughout the entire season. This week in week 9, he has 8, which breaks his previous record that he set in week 8. And of course, he was a fantastic rookie. So all of a sudden, I think Brandon Aiyuk is someone that you can consider going through and playing. And no, Deebo Samuel is not 100% healthy. That is something I at least want to put a small asterisk on this and note. But is Deebo Samuel really ever 100% healthy? Deebo is definitely still the wide receiver that you want in San Francisco, though. If anybody's trying to come out and tell you that Brandon Aiyuk all of a sudden is the wide receiver 1, it's just clickbait. Don't even pay attention to it, because on a points per game basis, Deebo Samuel still the wide receiver 2 this season. Deebo Samuel still has more targets this week with 9 targets in this offense, but Aiyuk comes away with more fantasy points. Now, our next lesson learned is some weeks we just have no idea what the hell is going to happen. This is evidenced with the Buffalo Bills and the Dallas Cowboys offenses. And now I will say that I know a lot of people are going to be worried about Allen. A lot of people are going to be worried about Dak and the other pieces with these teams. Please do not overreact. This is just one small blimp. Everybody remember back what we had with Aaron Rodgers against the New Orleans Saints back in week 1. Sometimes you get these very freak games like the Buffalo Bills losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's kind of the game of football. That's why football is so fun. That is why fantasy football is as big as it is. And that if you 100% knew what was going to happen every single week and there was no randomness, if there was no just spot that made you do a double check, go, oh my God, did that really just happen? Then Football wouldn't be fun. Nobody would ever go to a Jacksonville Jaguars game if they didn't have the chance to beat the Buffalo Bills. Nobody would go to the Denver Broncos game if they didn't have a chance to overcome a 10-point spread and beat the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, I know that I really just want to be putting this out here just to mainly tell people not to overreact. But we can say a lesson learned is you never know what's really going to happen. Now, let's look at this Indianapolis Colts offense, and let's talk about how dominant that Jonathan Taylor has been. Love Taylor coming into the season. Once we had Quentin Nelson getting carted off the field, I wanted to come out here and panic, but it doesn't really matter when we have Taylor in goddamn near every single league when he was falling to the end of the first, the beginning of the second round. If we're going to go through, look at, oh my God, I can't even talk about this, bringing it up. Jonathan Taylor, let's start it off back in week 4. 114 total yards and a touchdown. In week 5, if my math is correct, it's like 170 yards and a touchdown. In week 6, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. In week 7, 110 yards, a touchdown. In week 8, 122 yards and a touchdown. This past week, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor looks like he is becoming the elite of the elite running backs. He was that prospect coming out of Wisconsin that he profiled to be the size of Ezekiel Elliott, the athleticism of Saquon Barkley, and clearly this is a player that's running behind an elite offensive line, and he's able to take advantage of that. Not much to say other than Jonathan Taylor, a goddamn god, and he's going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 10 as well. I'd imagine that this is a game where he just rolls through this defense, even though Josh Allen in this Buffalo Bills offense wasn't able to. Now, speaking of this Jacksonville Jaguars offense, I think that it's about time that maybe you just go through cut Laviska Shenault. Now, with Laviska Shenault, this was a wide receiver that I liked coming into the season. I thought that he did have upside, but I also had much higher expectations with Trevor Lawrence. Didn't think that Urban Meyer was just going to be completely phasing him out of this offense. But with Laviska here, this is a wide receiver that has had, over the past 4 weeks, over the past month essentially, he's had 21 targets. That's not going to get it done. If you're going to be a wide receiver in one of the worst offenses in the NFL, you have to be fueled by volume. Just going back to what we have with someone, say like Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is the perfect example of that. Yeah, Cooks is playing in Houston, just a wasteland of fantasy production. But with the small amount of fantasy production that is available in Houston, Brandon Cooks soaks up all of it. He has all of it. And with Laviska Shenault, Jamal Agnew, Dan Arnold, they can't be getting this target volume. They can't be just some of the top options in Jacksonville, or it's going to be an embarrassing day for Laviska. It's going to be an embarrassing day for Marvin Jones. I don't want to tell you to drop Marvin Jones, but it's getting to the point where we have to at least know that he's on the back end of our roster. Because if we're going since week 4 for Marvin Jones, right? Let's go back to week 4. Let's go to the fantasy points that we have had. 5, 3, 23, 8, and 5. There's no reason to expect that this offense gets that much better anytime soon. They have some pretty tough matchups coming up. They got the Colts, the 49ers. They have an easy one against the Falcons, but beyond that, then they get the Rams in week 13. Now they have a nice fantasy football playoff schedule, but at the end of the day, can we really be waiting around that long for Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault? And if you are making it to the fantasy football playoffs, who the hell cares about their playoff schedule? Because you should have a team that you're not even considering them. So I would love to know your opinion in the Premier right now. I'd love to know your opinion in the comment section if you weren't able to make it out to the Premier for whatever reason. Yeah, let me know what you're thinking about Laviska and Marvin Jones. Let me know if you think it's time to cut. Now, something else that we got wrong this week is it looks like Christian McCaffrey cannot save this Carolina Panthers offense, where, yes, it's a tough matchup. 100% want to be acknowledging that going up against the New England Patriots is no easy task for any quarterback. But at the end of the day, Sam Darnold comes out here and he scores about 4 fantasy points. He has 172 passing yards, 3 interceptions, and no passing touchdowns. Now, I'll say he definitely has some better matchups coming up, but it's not great. He still does have like the Bills week 15, the Buccaneers week 16. We don't want to be playing Sam Darnold in those. I would say 100% you need to cut Darnold. But the more interesting conversation here is exactly what do we do with DJ Moore? Because DJ Moore has trended in a horrible direction over the past month, where if we're going to be looking, let's do this. Let's look at the first month. Let's look at weeks 1 through 4 with DJ Moore on a points per game basis. He was the wide receiver 4 overall, only behind Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, and Deebo Samuel. Now, we're going to be looking at weeks 5 through 9 just to see what the last 4 or 5 weeks have looked like for DJ Moore, to see how far this production has fallen off. He's gone from the wide receiver 4 overall to the wide receiver. Oh my gosh, this would be even worse than I thought. Oh my gosh, this is way worse than I thought. The wide receiver 50 on a points per game basis. Elijah Moore has more fantasy points on a points per game basis than DJ Moore. He has half the amount of production over the past 5 weeks than he did in the first 4. I was wanting to say Christian McCaffrey coming in was going to be just completely changing how defensive coordinators were going up against the Carolina Panthers. I wanted to say Christian McCaffrey was going to be able to pick up more first downs and just sustain drives for this Carolina Panthers offense. It was going to make everybody a little bit more appealing. And in the case of DJ Moore, this is a player that over there on Patreon, oh, by the way, on Patreon, we should have our up-to-date rankings fixed, I'll say, Tuesday. Let me watch that game on Monday. Let me just have a second to let everything sink in here and really look at the amount of snaps and the amount of routes run some of these wide receivers were able to have. But I think that we're going to be making some drastic changes. One of them that DJ Moore has to fall down significantly. I had DJ Moore in our up-to-date rankings over there on Patreon coming into the week. At wide receiver 13, we had him behind Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. I think he has to be falling probably to wide receiver 19, 20-ish. Like, if I ask you right now, do you want DJ Moore or Deontay Johnson? Like, I'm biased. I may say DJ Moore, but it doesn't really matter if the production's going to go in the case of Deontay Johnson. Probably has to be falling behind him. Probably has to be falling behind Tyler Lockett. Probably has to be falling behind Michael Pittman. DJ Moore may be a low in wide receiver too. I'm not going to overreact in this video. I'll definitely take a little bit of time to think about it and have a better set of rankings for our next rest of season rankings over there on Patreon, which should be updated on Tuesday. But yeah, right now you are not excited about what we have with DJ Moore in this offense. Now let's go over to Denver and let's talk about a player that we were saying to sell high a few weeks ago. Hopefully you listened with Cortland Sutton here, because it looks like Cortland Sutton simply is not the wide receiver 1 in Denver anymore. I mean, this is something we talked about at length. We talked about the fact that it was going to be a Jerry Jeudy coming back from injury. Cortland Sutton this past week, 2 targets, 1 reception, 9 receiving yards. The week before that, with Jerry Jeudy back in here, he had 4 targets, 2 receptions, 40 receiving yards. Cortland Sutton has not totaled 10 points over the past 2 weeks. So all the haters that wanted to make fun of me for saying to sell Cortland Sutton, yeah, where are you hating now? Jerry Jeudy coming out this past week. I know the production wasn't fantastic. He does drop about 30 points. The stat line, I'm sorry, not 30 points, 13 points. Stat line's great. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 69 receiving yards. Yes, the touchdown's not there, so he doesn't have the week-winning game, but you know it's going to be if he continues to have this volume in this offense. So yeah, bet on Jerry Jeudy, fade Cortland Sutton, as we've been saying for quite a while now. Now, our next lesson learned is, yes, it looks like Mike Davis may be splitting this backfield 50-50 with Cordell Patterson, but it does not matter. As we said, with no Calvin Ridley in this offense, Cordell Patterson was going to be asked to be a little bit more like a wide receiver in Atlanta. That's kind of what you got. I mean, you know, that big reception that we had from Cordell Patterson, I mean, that really, I don't want to say, pretty much won this game here for the Atlanta Falcons. That came with Cordell Patterson being on the outside. That came with him lining up on the outside. So please don't be looking at any snap data that you have between Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson thinking that's going to be impactful for how you're viewing these running backs going forward. Cordell Patterson, as we mentioned, is a must-start player every single week, because he's like you take a running back to. It's like you take J.D. McKissick, and then you also take Russell Gage, and you go, hey, we're going to combine both of your productions. Yeah, you're not that exciting individually, but we're going to make you one player. And that's who you have with Cordell Patterson. He gets 6 receptions, 126 receiving yards in this offense. I mean, 9 carries, 10 yards in that category. But one thing that you really like to see with Cordell Patterson is that you'd imagine that the touchdown volume will even be higher than this going forward, just knowing that he has been getting the work in the red zone. So I think I think with Cordell Patterson, this is a player that you're plugging and playing every single week with no Calvin Ridley, not even thinking about it. Now, our next lesson learned, going over to Cincinnati, Joe Mixon is a straight up 3-down bell cow running back, something that we have talked about a ton. Y'all know we love Joe Mixon coming into this season based on the fact that you had no Giovanni Bernard here, based on the fact that we were expecting this offense with the addition of Jamar Chase to be drastically better, given the fact that, I mean, you would be able to see just the opponent's stack box ratio be way down. You were going to have Joe Mixon be able to be a more efficient runner, and he was going to get more targets out of the backfield with no Giovanni Bernard. Back-to-back weeks with Joe Mixon here. I mean, 13 carries this week, 5 receptions, 46 receiving yards. He has totaled 100 receiving yards over the past 2 games. He's almost gotten there with rushing yards as well. He has the role in the red zone. He's had 4 touchdowns over the past 2 weeks. So maybe, just maybe, Joe Mixon may appear on a sell high video for us. But y'all know that's kind of how we roll. Once you see the unsustainable touchdown rate, easy spot to say, okay, well, yes, if we can sell Joe Mixon for Dalvin Cook, we do it. But nonetheless, Joe Mixon looks like he's that 3-down workhorse in Cincinnati. They can be very excited about going into a bye week this week. So, of course, that does suck that you're not going to get to play him. Now, our next lesson learned is, looks like Damien Harris may be getting faded out of New England. Y'all know Damien Harris was a running back that I did not like coming into the season, even though he was everybody's favorite sleeper for the New England Patriots. What was the reason that we did not like Damien Harris? A, no involvement in the receiving game. In a PPR format, you cannot have absolutely no involvement in the receiving game and expect to have a high ceiling. B, with Ramondre Stevenson, this is a running back that we did not expect to roll at the beginning of the year. But what did we say with those day 3 guys? They're not going to have the role at the beginning of the season, but they will continue to expand it as the year goes on. This week, if we're going to be breaking down the snaps that you had for these running backs, 62 total snaps for New England here, a total of 24 snaps for Damien Harris. So Damien Harris had less than half of the snaps for New England, and he had 1 target out of the backfield. I am telling you, if you continue to bet on that running back prototype in a PPR format, you're going to fail in the long haul. Now, yes, yet again, Damien Harris is able to get there with a touchdown. Yet again, anybody who started Damien Harris is going, oh, Mason, it wasn't that bad. He was the running back 28. He had 10 fantasy points scored. At the end of the day, you take away that touchdown, there's a running back to drop 4 fantasy points. That's not someone that we're going to be betting on. If you continue to bet on that player in the long haul, you are going to lose. Please sell Damien Harris where you can. I mean, he has some decent matchups over the next coming weeks, like in week 11, he has the Falcons, week 12, he has the Titans, but I'm still going to continue to try to fade Damien Harris. I feel like Harris has had about the best season you could ask for. Harris has had 7 rushing touchdowns so far, which would be about a pretty high touchdown rate considering the amount of touches that he has had overall. And at the end of the day, Damien Harris is the running back 23 on a points per game basis. I'm going to be fading that player every chance we get. Now, our next lesson learned is it looks like our guy Keenan Allen is back. Now, y'all know earlier this season, what were the 3 things that you were tired of hearing me talk about every single chance I had the opportunity? Buy low on A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley. Yeah, we're not going to go there. And Keenan Allen. I mean, with Keenan Allen, it's very simple. He was getting the volume consistently in Los Angeles. If you were looking at the historical production that we have had from Keenan Allen with his yards per target, yeah, it wasn't fantastic. His touchdown rate's never been great, but we know that with Keenan Allen, when the volume's there in a PPR format, he is just going to be a smash play every chance you get. I mean, with Keenan Allen, some very typical Keenan Allen lines over the past 2 weeks. 11 targets, 6 receptions, 77 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Yeah, that's boring. It's 20 fantasy points. This week, 13 targets, 12 receptions, 104 receiving yards. You don't question it. Keenan Allen, I mean, and our rest of season rankings never really moved him down that much. I don't even think that we can move him up in our rest of season rankings over there on Patreon. Now, he'll be above DJ Moore. I'll definitely tell you that. I don't even think we can move him up anymore just because you're kind of expecting this to begin with Keenan. Now, our next lesson learned is, I guess we shouldn't have given up on Devonta Smith. I guess with Smith here, y'all know this was a wide receiver we were too damn high on over the past 3 weeks, given the role that he had in Philadelphia, given the talent profile that Smith has at the same time, expecting that we were going to get it anytime soon. I gave up this week. I gave up. We backed out. He came out, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 116 yards, and a receiving touchdown as well. And a matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers where I was going, okay, maybe this is a spot where you want to just assume that you were going to have the Philadelphia Eagles just leaning on the run, given how bad that Chargers defense is against the run. Now, I will say from an actionable stance, now y'all know I've been a fan of Smith, but the issue is, are we going to be excited about playing him over the next few weeks? Like, he has the Broncos. We just saw the Broncos shut out the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not playing him against the Broncos, even though he just dropped 22 fantasy points. Then he has the Saints. Are you playing him against the New Orleans Saints either? I think over the next 2 weeks, it's maybe just going to be up and down like you would expect from a rookie wide receiver. Maybe if you drafted Devonta Smith in a best ball format, you can be very excited about that. But for now, I think that we honestly just maybe have to be fading him. Now, Our next lesson learned before we get to James Robinson, we'll get to Robinson, is going to be George Kittle is back. Now, George Kittle, we know reports coming into the week was that he was not going to be 100%. With George Kittle, it didn't matter. You had to play him anyway, given the fact that it only took one play for Kittle to go bananas. And it took a little bit more than that. He had 8 targets, 6 receptions, over 100 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. If you're looking at the amount of snaps that George Kittle played as well, I mean, Kittle played 47 out of 59 snaps, so he wasn't on a pitch count. I mean, that was just a complete BS report, apparently. Looks like George Kittle is 100%. Looks like Kittle, most likely the tight end 4. I don't know if we want to be having him below or ahead of Kyle Pitts. That's going to be something we're having to think about rest of season. Trust me, with how many shares of George Kittle I had coming into the year, it'd be really good if he was a top 3 tight end rest of season. For now, he's just back, and I would love to know your opinion on if you think he should be above or below Kyle Pitts, because that's going to be about the cutoff with Kittle. Now, let's get to it. Let's get to what everybody is here for. I know if you're in the Premier right now, y'all are laughing at me. You can drop some, everybody in the Premier chat, drop some clown emojis. You're allowed to drop those clown emojis down there in the comment section as well. But let's go over to James Conner, who scored approximately 40.3 fantasy points this week. He was the running back 1, not even close. He scored 10 more points than the running back 3 in Nick Chubb. And with James Conner, he did this off a stat line of 96 rushing yards. So he had his season high rushing yards, 21 rushing attempts, his season high in his rush attempts. He had 5 targets out of the backfield. 5 targets out of the backfield is what he had coming into the week for the entire season. He had 5 targets through 8 weeks coming into this 1 week. I mean, and he matches that and gets 5 receptions, 77 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. I mean, he pretty much doubled the receiving yardage that he had through 8 weeks in this 1 week in week 9. Now, let's ask ourselves, did something happen this week? Like, this seems a little too good to be true. We're looking at James Conner, who has a completely different role in this offense, where on average, this was a running back that was getting about 11 carries a game going into this. He doubles that. This was on average a running back that was getting about half a reception a game. He 10Xs that going into this week. What changed? Oh, let's do a little bit of digging here. Let's pull up some snap data. What happened in Arizona? Oh, is that Chase Edmonds? 1 snap played out of 70? Oh, did Chase Edmonds start this game and then get injured on the first play? Yes, that's what happened. So this is what you get with bell cow usage with James Conner. This is what you get when James Conner is not going to be in a committee. I will say, as we have always said, let me rewind the tape. Let's go back to our last sell high video when we're saying to sell high on James Robinson. I'll go download that video for y'all so we can replay that. Let's replay that here. I will tell you, I was terrified though when Chase Edmonds was down for a little bit with the shoulder injury on Thursday night, because if Edmonds does go down, James Conner becomes a top 12 running back in fantasy. Okay, now that's out of the way. Yes, like we've always said, with James Conner, this is a top 12 running back given the offense if you don't have Chase Edmonds. We can get that out of the way. All we have to do from here is see if we have any reports on Chase Edmonds, see when, if he's going to be playing, and if he's not going to be playing anytime soon, fire up James Conner as a running back 1 in fantasy. No questions. He's playing in a great offense. Now, I'll say when Kyler Murray comes back, maybe you don't get 3 touchdowns a game from James Conner. Maybe you get him vulturing touchdowns at the goal line, like we've said about Kyler Murray back in 2020. You didn't get Kyler Murray playing today. You're not expecting Colt McCoy to vulture those rushing touchdowns away from Chase Edmonds or James Conner. But yeah, you have to be excited about what you had with Conner this week. I don't even know how many leagues we had James Conner in. Hopefully we had him in more than 8%, but probably we didn't. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. Thank you so much, of course, for checking out the video. I really hope that y'all enjoyed it. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment letting me know how stupid I am. Subscribe to the channel. And of course, you can always join the flock over there on Patreon. You can get your own Fantasy Flock Network hat, get an in-depth podcast breaking down your fantasy team by yours truly, get access to our rest of season rankings, get our dynasty rankings, get into a dynasty league with us at the same time. But yeah, that's all I got for y'all. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I hope that you have a great day.